I never thought I'd be the kind of person to tell a story like this. Honestly, if you told me a few months ago that I'd be whispering into a microphone, recounting events that sound like something out of a bad horror movie, I would have laughed. I'm a practical person. I work in IT. I believe in things I can see, measure, or test. But then the phone showed up, and everything I thought I knew about how the world works fell apart. It started on a rainy Thursday evening in November. I just finished another long day at the office, babysitting servers and patching outdated systems for clients who never listened to me until something broke. I came home to my small apartment, the kind that still smelled faintly of the last tenant's cooking no matter how much air freshener I sprayed. My shoes squelched on the mat, and I tossed my jacket onto the couch, too tired to care if it got wrinkled. That's when I noticed it. There was a phone sitting on the kitchen counter. Not my phone. Not the company-issued work cell. Just another phone. It was an old model, a flip phone, the kind I hadn't seen in over a decade. Black plastic, scuffed at the edges, but intact. I didn't own anything like it. I hadn't had anyone over. And yet there it was, lying face up like someone had placed it carefully in the center of the counter. At first, I thought maybe I'd just forgotten about it somehow. Maybe I'd found it while cleaning and set it down. But that didn't make sense. I hadn't cleaned in weeks. I picked it up. The plastic was cold, heavier than I remembered old phones being. No logos, no stickers, no brand name anywhere. The only thing on it was the small monochrome screen, glowing faintly, even though I hadn't pressed anything. The screen said, "One new call scheduled." I frowned. What did that mean? Scheduled? I flipped it open, expecting the usual outdated interface, but the screen stayed blank white except for those words. One new call scheduled. Time, 12:01 a.m. It was 9:17 p.m. I laughed nervously, assuming it was some kind of prank. Maybe a neighbor slipped it in as a joke, though I couldn't imagine any of them going through the trouble. Still, the weirdness clung to me as I set the phone down and tried to shake it off. The hours crawled by. I made dinner, watched some random show on Netflix, scrolled through my real phone until my eyes blurred. But the whole time, I kept glancing toward the counter where the strange flip phone sat like it was watching me. Waiting. At 11:58, I gave up pretending I wasn't curious. I sat at the kitchen table, the phone in front of me, its screen now flashing faintly. Incoming call scheduled. My pulse thudded harder than I wanted to admit. I felt like a kid again, daring myself to look in the mirror and say Bloody Mary. I kept telling myself it was nothing, some old device pre-programmed with a timer. That was it. No mystery, no ghost story, no reason for my stomach to knot with dread. Then, at exactly 12:01 a.m., the phone rang. Not my smartphone on the coffee table. Not the apartment buzzer. The flip phone. Its ringtone was shrill, mechanical, grating, the kind of tinny chime that drilled into my skull. I stared at it, frozen. The screen glowed, and two words pulsed in black text. Incoming call, tomorrow. My throat tightened. My first instinct was to throw it across the room. Instead, I forced myself to answer. The hinge creaked as I flipped it open. I pressed it to my ear. For a long moment, there was nothing but static. Then a voice. It was my voice. "Don't go outside tomorrow," it said, trembling, rushed. "Whatever you do, don't leave your apartment. Please, for the love of God, listen to me." I nearly dropped the phone. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped a band around it. "Who is this?" I whispered. My voice cracked. "You know who I am," the voice said. "I don't have much time. Something's going to happen tomorrow. If you leave, you'll regret it. You'll—" The line crackled violently, and then the call dropped. I sat there in silence, staring at the phone like it might bite me. My own breathing filled the room, too loud, too fast. I told myself it had to be a trick. Some kind of voice recording app. Maybe. Deepfake technology was good these days. Maybe someone was messing with me, though I couldn't imagine who would go through this elaborate setup just to scare me. I set the phone down, my hands shaking, and tried to convince myself it didn't mean anything. Just a prank. Just a weird relic with a scheduled ringtone. But deep down, something in me knew that wasn't true. Because the voice hadn't just sounded like me. It had felt like me. Like hearing an echo of a nightmare I hadn't dreamed yet. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the apartment, Every rush of wind outside the window made me jolt awake, half expecting the phone to ring again. By the time dawn broke, my body ached from tension. I dragged myself out of bed, went through the motions, shower, coffee, scrolling headlines, all while the warning echoed in my skull. Don't go outside tomorrow. It was ridiculous, I told myself. Of course I was going to go outside. I had work, bills, responsibilities. I wasn't going to let some bizarre prank dictate my life. But when I stood by the door, shoes on, hand on the knob, something stopped me. A pressure like invisible hands pressing against my chest, whispering, "Not yet." I told myself I'd just wait a few minutes, just to prove to myself I wasn't rattled. Minutes turned into an hour. An hour turned into 2. I paced the apartment like a trapped animal, glancing again and again at the flip phone, which sat silently on the counter, as if mocking me. At 11:30 a.m., I heard the first scream. It came from outside, faint but sharp enough to make my blood run cold. I rushed to the window, pulling back the blinds just enough to peek through. Down on the street, chaos had erupted. Cars honked wildly, people shouted, running in different directions. I couldn't see what had triggered it, only flashes of panic in strangers' faces. A woman stumbled and fell hard onto the sidewalk, scrambling to her feet as others surged past her. My stomach lurched. If I had left that morning, I would have been right in the middle of it. I didn't know what was happening out there, but the realization sank into me like ice water. The voice on the phone had been right. And it wasn't finished with me. I stood frozen at the window, gripping the blinds until they bent beneath my fingers. The scene outside churned with confusion. People running, cars blocking the intersection, the shrill wail of a distant siren growing louder by the second. It wasn't like the disasters you see in movies. No explosions, no monsters stomping down the street. Just chaos, sudden and inexplicable. Strangers shoving one another in blind panic, their eyes wide with something I couldn't quite read. Fear, yes, but fear of what? I want to know. I needed to know. But I couldn't bring myself to step outside. Not after that call. Not after the warning in my own voice. Instead, I stayed by the window, watching until the commotion began to thin. Police cruisers arrived. Officers shouted instructions through megaphones I couldn't make out from my fourth-floor perch. People dispersed reluctantly, their movements jittery, like their nerves were still on fire. By mid-afternoon, the street looked almost normal again, though tension hung in the air like smoke. I paced the apartment, gnawing at the inside of my cheek. My rational mind tried to explain it away. Maybe there had been an accident, a fight, a gas leak, something mundane that spiraled into panic. And maybe I would have stumbled right into it if I'd gone outside. But the other part of me, the part that still felt the tremor in the phone call, knew better. That night, I kept the flip phone in my bedroom on the nightstand beside me. I told myself it was because I wanted to keep an eye on it, but the truth was simpler. I couldn't stop staring at it. I half expected it to start glowing in the dark like some cursed artifact. At 11:59 p.m., the screen flickered. My breath caught. The words appeared again. Incoming call scheduled. Time, 12:01 a.m. I lay there, heart thundering in my chest, until the shrill ringtone split the silence. I answered with shaking hands. This time, there was no static. The voice came through clear, strained but urgent. Listen to me. Tomorrow, you're going to get a knock on your door. Don't open it. No matter what they say, no matter how much they beg. Don't open it. I swallowed hard. Who are you? I demanded. You know, the voice said again. It's you. Just don't open the door. Please. You can't imagine what happens if you do. My grip tightened on the phone. If you're really me, prove it. There was a pause. Then the voice said softly, when you were 8, you got lost at the county fair. You wandered into the livestock barn and cried because you thought the goats were staring at you. You never told anyone about that. Not even Mom. My blood ran cold. My knees nearly buckled. See, the voice whispered. I don't have time. Just remember, don't open the door. The line clicked dead. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone trembling in my hands, my mind spinning in 1,000 directions at once. How can anyone know that memory? I hadn't even thought about it in years. If the first call hadn't convinced me, this one did. Somehow, Some way, the phone was letting me talk to myself. Not the me I was now, but the me from one day in the future. And that terrified me more than anything. The next day, I didn't go to work. I didn't even get dressed. I sat in the living room, blinds drawn, the flip phone clutched in my palm like a lifeline. Every creak of the hallway outside made me flinch. At 2:14 p.m., it came. The knock. 3 sharp raps, confident but not aggressive. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might burst. "Hello," a voice called. A woman's voice. Warm, uncertain. I think I have the wrong apartment. Can you help me?" I clenched my teeth. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stay quiet. But the voice, it was so gentle, so believable. "Please," she said, knocking again. "I'm just moving down the hall and my phone died. Can I just use yours for a moment?" My throat ached with the effort of silence. Sweat dripped down my temples. The knocking stopped. For a long time, there was only silence. Then, so faint I almost missed it, a whisper drifted through the door. "I know you're in there." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. "Don't pretend you can't hear me," the whisper continued. The sweetness was gone, replaced with something sharp, hungry. "You can't hide forever." I staggered back from the door, clutching the phone to my chest. I wanted to scream, to call the police, but something deep inside me knew they wouldn't understand. They couldn't stop whatever this was. The voice lingered a moment longer, then faded. I didn't hear footsteps retreating. It was as if whoever, or whatever, had been there simply dissolved into the air. Hours later, I finally worked up the courage to check the peephole. The hallway was empty. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat in the dark, staring at the phone, waiting for it to ring again. And when it did, at 12:01 a.m., I almost didn't answer. But I did. This time, the voice, my voice, sounded broken. "Worn down. You made it through the door," it said quietly. "Good. That's good. But listen carefully. This doesn't stop. The phone won't stop. Each day, it'll warn you. Each day, the danger gets worse. You can't escape it. You can only survive it. One day at a time." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Why? Why me?" The voice hesitated. "Because you answered." Before I could say anything else, the line went dead. I stared at the blank screen until my vision blurred, the weight of those words crushing down on me. Because I answered. I should have thrown the phone away that first night. Tossed it down the garbage chute. Smashed it with a hammer. Anything to sever the tether that bound me to whatever nightmare had latched onto my life. But I didn't. Because deep down, I knew the truth. The phone wasn't just a curse. It was a warning system. And without it, I'd already be dead. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with the phone in front of me like it was a bomb I couldn't disarm. I hadn't slept more than an hour. My head throbbed. My thoughts were muddy. But the fear kept me alert in a way caffeine never could. Every so often, I thought about calling someone, my mom, an old friend, even my boss. But what could I say? "Hey, I got a phone that calls me from the future and tells me when I'm about to die." No one would believe me. Worse, they might believe me just enough to worry, and then they'd come here, get involved, and end up in danger themselves. No, this was mine to deal with. The day stretched on like an elastic band about to snap. Every creak of the pipes, every shuffle of footsteps in the hallway made me tense. I kept expecting another knock, another whisper through the door. But the hours passed without incident. By evening, I almost convinced myself maybe things had calmed down. Maybe the worst was over. But then I remembered the call. The voice had said it wouldn't stop. And sure enough, at 11:59, the phone lit up again. Incoming call scheduled. Time, 12:01 a.m. I sat rigid on the couch, eyes locked on the glowing screen, until the shrill ringtone pierced the silence. My hand shook as I flipped it open and pressed it to my ear. This time, my future self's voice was hoarse, like it had been screaming for hours. "Tomorrow, whatever you do, don't look at the windows. Don't open the blinds. Don't look outside. Do you understand?" My throat tightened. "Why? What's out there?" The voice cracked with something between fear and despair. "You don't want to know? Just promise me. Stay away from the windows." The line clicked off before I could press for more. I sat there, numb, the phone heavy in my palm. Windows? Why windows? The instructions so far had made some kind of twisted sense. Stay inside during chaos. Don't open the door to strangers. But this? Avoid the windows? It sounded insane. And yet, I thought the same about the first warning and the second, and both had been right. So the next day, I obeyed. I covered the blinds with blankets, taped the edges shut, did everything I could to block my view of the outside world. My apartment turned into a dim cave, lit only by the weak glow of lamps. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Then, around noon, I heard it. A sound outside the glass. Not footsteps, not voices. A scraping. Slow, deliberate. Like nails dragging across the window pane. I froze. The sound moved along the wall, lingering near the edges, pausing as if listening. My pulse pounded in my ears. I clutched the flip phone so hard my knuckles turned white, praying it would stay quiet. The scraping stopped, and then a whisper, faint, muffled by the glass, but unmistakable. Let me in. I pressed my back against the wall, shaking my head. No, I wouldn't look. I wouldn't give in. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, multiplying until it seemed to come from every window at once. Dozens of voices, pleading, coaxing, taunting. Some sounded like strangers, some like people I knew. Let me in. Please, just one look. It's safe out here. You'll see. Don't you miss the sky? My chest heaved with ragged breaths. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voices wormed their way into my skull, echoing inside my head. Hours passed that way. At least, it felt like hours. Time lost meaning in the darkened apartment. I rocked back and forth on the floor, whispering to myself like a lunatic. Don't look. Don't look. Don't look. Finally, the whispers faded. When silence returned, I collapsed against the wall, drenched in sweat, my throat raw from muttering. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. And right on schedule, at 12:01 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, my voice sounded calmer. Not peaceful. Never that, but steadier. You did well today, it said. You didn't look. That's important. If you had, it would have been over. You never come back from it. Tears blurred my vision. Why is this happening? Why me? I whispered. The voice was quiet for a long moment. Then it said, almost gently, you don't remember yet, but you will. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness, staring at the blank screen, my mind a storm of confusion and dread. You don't remember yet. What was I supposed to remember? The next day, I didn't cover the windows. I boarded them. I dragged old furniture, shelves, anything heavy I could lift, and barricaded the glass. I couldn't risk another round of whispers. By evening, the apartment looked like a bunker. The air was stale, the lights dim, my nerves stretched to the breaking point. And still, the phone sat there on the counter, waiting for midnight. When it rang, I almost didn't answer. But I couldn't resist. I had to know what tomorrow would bring. This time, the voice was flat, numb. Tomorrow, you'll be tempted to destroy the phone. You'll think it's the only way to end this. But don't. Don't even try. If you break it, if you throw it away, something worse will happen. Something you can't escape. My jaw clenched. You're telling me I have to keep this thing? Forever? The voice hesitated. As long as it keeps ringing. And then, softer, barely audible. I'm sorry. The line cut. I stared at the phone for a long time, my reflection faint in its black screen. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something shift inside me. Not just fear, not just dread, anger. I hadn't asked for this. I hadn't invited it. And yet here I was, a prisoner in my own home, ruled by the cryptic warnings of a voice that might not even be me. But no matter how furious I felt, one truth gnawed at me, undeniable and absolute. The phone wasn't lying, because every warning so far had saved my life, and tomorrow would bring another. The apartment no longer felt like mine. Every corner held shadows that seemed to lean closer when I wasn't looking. Every object felt wrong, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Even the air tasted different, stale, heavy, tinged with something metallic. But worse than the apartment was the phone. I kept it close now, always within arm's reach, as if it were a weapon. And in some ways it was a shield at least. Every time it rang, it gave me another chance to live, another day of borrowed time. but I could feel it changing me. I wasn't the same person who had stumbled into his kitchen and found a forgotten relic sitting on the counter. That man had a job, a life, routines. He cared about bills and deadlines, about what he was going to eat for dinner. I didn't. Not anymore. Now, I cared only about the calls. And tonight, as midnight drew closer, the anticipation coiled tighter than ever. I sat in the dark, the phone in my palm, my heart racing like it always did. When the shrill ringtone split the silence, I snapped it open instantly. The voice on the other end, my voice, sounded hollow, almost resigned. Tomorrow, don't trust what you see in the mirror. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? The voice was flat. It won't be you. Not really. Don't let it convince you otherwise. I gripped the phone until it creaked. This is insane. How long can this go on? How long until... But the line went dead. The silence afterward felt heavier than ever, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank television screen until the gray light of dawn seeped into the room. When I finally dragged myself to the bathroom, I did it without thinking. I flipped on the light, lifted my head, and froze. The man in the mirror smiled at me. I didn't. My lips were pressed tight, my face pale and drawn. But the reflection grinned, a wide, deliberate smile that stretched too long, too sharp. I stumbled back with a strangled sound. My reflection tilted its head, still smiling, eyes glinting with something I couldn't name. Then, slowly, it lifted its hand and placed it against the glass. My hands hung limp at my sides. The reflection's palm pressed flat against the mirror. And then, with agonizing slowness, it began to tap. Talp, 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 like it wanted me to let it out. I staggered from the bathroom, slamming the door shut, my heart clawing at my throat. I pressed my back against the wall, gasping for air, refusing to believe what I'd seen. But the sound followed me, faint at first, then louder. Talp, talp, talp. The mirror wasn't in the bathroom anymore. The mirror was everywhere. I shoved blankets over every reflective surface I could find. TV screen, black window glass, even the polished surface of the microwave. Anything that could throw my image back at me. Still, I felt its eyes, watching, waiting. When midnight came again, the phone rang like always. I didn't want to answer. For the first time, I thought about letting it ring, pretending it didn't exist. But the fear of not knowing, the fear of walking blind into whatever horror waited, was worse. So I flipped it open with shaking hands. This time, my voice sounded different. Not frantic, not weary. Calm, too calm. You're doing well, it said. Better than I did the first time. The words hit me like a punch. What do you mean? I whispered. The voice chuckled softly, bitterly. You don't realize it yet, do you? How many times this has happened? A chill rippled down my spine. This isn't the first time you've lived through this, the voice continued. Not even close. You've been here before. Hundreds of times. Maybe thousands. Every time, you find the phone. Every time, you answer. And every time, you try to survive one more day. My vision blurred. No, that's not possible. You'll remember, the voice said, almost kindly. One day, you'll remember everything. The loops, the warnings, the choices you made, the lives you lost. And when you do, the voice trailed off. When I do what? I demanded. The line clicked dead. I sat there, shaking, staring at the dark screen. Hundreds of times. Thousands. The thought gnawed at me all night, burrowing deep into my skull until it became all I could think about. What if it was true? What if this wasn't the first time? What if I had already lived this nightmare over and over, erasing my own memory each time I failed? What if I was trapped in a loop with no way out? The next day, the whispers returned. Not at the windows this time. Not from a door. From inside the apartment. I heard them in the corners of the room, in the hum of the fridge, in the buzz of the ceiling light. You're wasting your time, they murmured. It always ends the same. Why not give up now? Break the phone. I pressed my palms over my ears, shaking my head, but the voices weren't coming from outside. They were in my head. My own thoughts twisted into shapes that weren't mine. I tried screaming just to drown them out, but even that didn't help. My own scream echoed back at me, warped, like another voice layered over mine. By evening, I was a wreck. My throat burned, my head ached, and my nerves were stretched so thin I thought they'd snap at the smallest touch. And still, I waited for midnight. When the phone rang, I answered. This time, the voice was quieter, sadder. "I know you're tired," it said softly. "I know you want to end, but it won't. Not yet. You'll keep going because you have no choice. And the longer you go, the more you'll lose yourself." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Please," I begged. "Tell me how to stop it. Tell me how to make it end." There was a pause. Then the voice whispered, almost too faint to hear. "You already know." The line went dead. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I wondered if the phone was telling the truth. Maybe I didn't know. I just didn't want to remember. By now, time had lost all meaning. Days blurred into nights. Nights bled back into days. And I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept without jerking awake to the phantom sound of the phone's ringtone. My apartment was a tomb. Windows boarded, mirrors covered, doors triple-locked. Yet no matter what defenses I built, the fear seeped through, saturating every corner of the place like mold in the walls. And still I waited. Every night at 12:01, the phone rang. Every day, the warnings grew stranger. Don't answer the door. Don't look outside. Don't trust the mirror. Don't trust yourself. I obeyed them all. Because what else could I do? Every time I considered ignoring the advice, I remembered the screams outside, the whispers at the glass, the grin in the mirror. But lately, the warnings had stopped sounding like instructions. They sounded like reminders, as if I should already know them. And that terrified me most of all. One morning, I woke with the sickening certainty that something was wrong. My head felt heavier than usual, my limbs clumsy. I stumbled to the bathroom before remembering the mirror was covered. My hand hovered over the blanket draped across the glass, tempted to rip it away just to prove I still looked like me. Instead, I backed out of the room. When I turned toward the hallway, I froze. There was someone standing at the end of it. Not a stranger. Me. He stood there in the dim light. Same clothes, same face, same everything. But his eyes were hollow, ringed with bruised shadows, his skin pale like wax. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He raised a hand, trembling. His lips moved, but no sound came. Then he stepped toward me. I staggered back, slamming into the wall, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Stay away," I shouted, but the figure didn't stop. His eyes pleaded, his mouth still shaping words I couldn't hear. And then, just as suddenly, he vanished. Gone. Like he'd never been there at all. I collapsed to the floor, shaking, my breath ragged. It hadn't been a hallucination. I knew it hadn't. That had been me. Another me. By evening, the memory gnawed at me so badly I almost didn't notice the phone glowing. When it rang, I snatched it up like a drowning man grabbing a rope. This time, the voice on the line sounded weaker. Fragile, like it was unraveling. "You saw him, didn't you?" it whispered. My mouth went dry. "Who?" "You know who." Another version. One of the ones who didn't make it. They're still here, sometimes. Shadows of us. Reminders. My head spun. "How many are there?" The voice gave a bitter laugh. "Too many. Every time you fail, another piece of you gets left behind. They wander the cracks, stuck between yesterday and tomorrow. You'll see more of them if you keep going." I gripped the phone so hard it hurt. How do I stop it? How do I break the loop? The voice went quiet for a long time. Then it whispered, "You already tried." The line clicked dead. I sat there in the silence, my whole body shaking. "You already tried." The words looped in my mind over and over until they didn't feel like words anymore. Just echoes. That night, I dreamed of mirrors. Dozens of them, stretching in every direction, each reflecting me. But not me. Some of the reflections smiled. Some cried. Some screamed until blood poured from their mouths. I woke drenched in sweat, the phone glowing faintly on the nightstand. By the next day, I couldn't tell what was real anymore. The walls seemed to ripple at the edges of my vision. Shadows lingered too long, stretching when they should have stayed still. Every sound carried a double echo, like I was hearing not just now, but something from before. And then the déjà vu started. I'd be boiling water for instant noodles when a thought would crash into my skull. This exact moment already happened. I dropped the pot, swearing, and remember dropping it before, hearing it clatter to the floor in an echo that wasn't an echo at all, but a memory. I'd be pacing the living room when my foot would slip on a loose board, and the flash would come. I'd already fallen. I'd already split my head open. I'd already died on that floor. Except I hadn't. Not yet. When midnight came again, I almost didn't answer the call. But the phone didn't allow hesitation. It screamed until my nerves cracked, until I flipped it open just to stop the noise. This time, the voice was frantic. Tomorrow, you'll hear me in the apartment. You'll hear me calling your name. Don't answer. No matter what. It's not me. Not really. I choked back a sob. But you're me. You're all me. How do I know which one to trust? The voice hissed with something close to rage. If you don't listen, you'll find out the hard way. And believe me, you don't want that. The line died. I curled on the couch, shaking, clutching the phone to my chest like it could keep me from splitting apart. The next day, I barely moved. I sat in the center of the apartment, back against the wall, eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. By afternoon, I heard it. A voice. My voice. Hey, it called softly from the kitchen. It's okay. You don't have to hide anymore. I clenched my teeth, tears burning my eyes. Come on, it coaxed. We can end this. Together. Just answer me. I pressed my hands over my ears, shaking my head, whispering over and over, it's not real. It's not real. It's not real. But the voice didn't stop. It grew sharper, angrier, until it was screaming my name, echoing through the apartment in a pitch that made my skull ache. I screamed back until my throat gave out. And then silence. Not just quiet silence. Too deep. Too empty. I realized with a creeping horror that I couldn't even hear my own breathing anymore. When sound finally returned, it was the phone ringing. Midnight. I answered with trembling hands. This time, the voice didn't waste words. You're breaking down, it said. I can hear it. The others can hear it too. And when you finally crack, they'll come for you. My lip quivered. Who are they? The voice went quiet for a long time. Finally, it whispered, they're us. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness, clutching the phone, unable to breathe. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was still me. By now, I couldn't tell if I was living one day or 100. The warnings bled together. Don't look outside. Don't open the door. Don't trust the mirror. Don't answer the voice. I obeyed them all, but the price of survival was steep. My apartment had become a fortress, but also a coffin. My mind was a snarl of echoes, half-memories, déjà vu so sharp it felt like knives in my skull. And still, the phone rang. Always at 12:01 a.m., always my voice on the other end, always another rule to keep me alive for one more day. Until I began to wonder if being alive was really what I wanted. Because living like this didn't feel like living anymore. The final straw came 3 nights ago, or maybe 300. I can't tell. When I answered the phone, the voice on the other end wasn't frantic or resigned. It was calm. Too calm. Tomorrow, it said, you'll remember. That was all. Then silence. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay in the dark, waiting, my heart thudding with dread. And when the gray light of morning finally crept in, it hit me. A memory. Not a dream. Not déjà vu. A memory. I remembered smashing the phone once, lifting a hammer and bringing it down again and again, shattering the plastic, crushing the screen, until it was nothing but pieces on the floor. I remembered throwing it down the garbage chute. I remembered hurling it into the river. Each time it came back, waiting on the counter, on the nightstand, in my hand when I woke up, even though I swore I hadn't touched it. And worse than the phone itself were the consequences. The things that happened the days after I destroyed it. I couldn't remember the details, only flashes, half images that made my skin crawl. But I remembered the feeling. The overwhelming certainty that whatever horrors I'd endured so far were nothing compared to what came when I was cut off from the calls. I had begged for the phone to return. Begged. And it had. That's when I realized the truth. I wasn't surviving because of the phone. I was surviving for the phone. It wasn't protecting me. It was keeping me here. And the warnings weren't to save me. They were to prolong me. By afternoon, I was pacing like a trapped animal, muttering to myself. Every surface seemed to ripple, as if the walls themselves were breathing. Shadows bent wrong. The air vibrated with whispers I couldn't quite hear. And when midnight came, I almost didn't answer. But of course I did, because I always do. This time, the voice sounded close. Too close, like it was right behind me. You remember now, don't you? It whispered. I closed my eyes. Yes, you see the truth. You understand why it never ends. Tears stung my eyes. Why? Why me? The voice chuckled softly, bitterly. There is no you. Not anymore. There's only us. An endless chain of us, calling ourselves from tomorrow, warning ourselves, keeping the loop alive. We're the phone. We're the call. And we can't stop. My throat tightened. Then what's the point? The voice paused. Then it said, to keep going. One more day. Always one more day. The line went dead. And I understood. I wasn't the first version of me to live this. I wasn't the second, or the 10th, or the 1000th. I was just another link in the chain, another echo in the loop. And when my time came to break, when I couldn't take another second, I'd leave behind a shadow like the ones I'd seen. A husk, a ghost of myself, trapped between yesterdays. And tomorrow, another me would answer the phone. I thought about letting it ring tonight. I thought about breaking the loop. But as midnight approached, my hands moved on their own. I picked up the phone. I held it to my ear. And when it rang, I answered. Because that's what I do. Because that's what I've always done. And because no matter how many times I've tried to end it, there's always one more call waiting for me. From tomorrow.